Jack Henderson was a regular guy. He lived in a small town, worked hard every day, and never looked for trouble. Jack was a plumber, and a very good one. People trusted him with their homes, their businesses, and even their emergencies. If a pipe was leaking, Jack would be there no matter the hour. He worked with tools most people didn't even recognize, and he knew how to fix just about any kind of plumbing problem. He wasn't rich, he wasn't famous, but he was skilled and proud of what he did. On a cold Friday night, Jack sat in his favorite bar with a few friends. The place smelled like fried food and spilled beer. The music was loud, the laughter louder. They were all talking about their week, sharing stories and teasing each other. Jack had just finished telling a funny story about a clogged sink filled with glitter when someone made a joke that would change his life forever. Before the story begins, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Tomorrow's episode is extra special, and tell me where you're watching this video from below. "Hey, Jack," said his friend Mike with a grin. "You think you're so good, I bet you could even fix the pipes on a submarine." Everyone laughed. Jack laughed too at first, but then he raised an eyebrow and shrugged. "Well," he said slowly, "pipes are pipes. Doesn't matter if they're in a house or underwater. Water flows the same, doesn't it?" "Come on," another friend chimed in. "A submarine's way different. Tight spaces, weird systems, everything's metal and pressurized. You couldn't even find the leak." Jack took a sip from his glass and leaned back. "Bet me," he said. "You get me on one of those subs, I'll fix whatever's broken." Laughter turned into silence for a moment. Then Mike leaned forward. "Are you serious? You'd actually go on a sub?" Jack nodded. "You said it yourself. I'm good. Might be the challenge I need." None of them expected what would happen next. As it turned out, one of Mike's cousins worked in a naval yard, and it just so happened that an old training submarine had been sitting unused due to a complex plumbing issue. It was used for simulations and testing, but the water systems were leaking, the pressure wasn't right, and no one had been able to fix it for months. The bet quickly turned real. Within days, Jack was contacted by someone from the naval facility. They weren't official military, just a private contractor, but they had access to the sub. They said they'd heard about Jack's bold claim. They also said he was welcome to try fixing the system. No promises, no guarantees. But if he managed it, there'd be more work waiting. Jack had never been on a submarine before. When he arrived at the dock, the size of it amazed him. It wasn't one of those huge military machines from movies, but it was still massive and complicated. The surface was all metal, cold to the touch, with a narrow entry hatch that led inside. He stepped through the opening and climbed down a small ladder. Inside, everything felt different. The air smelled strange, like metal and oil and salt. The corridors were narrow, and he had to duck in most places. Pipes ran along the ceilings and walls, hundreds of them, twisting and turning like vines in a jungle. Labels were everywhere, but most of them used codes and numbers that meant nothing to him. A man in a grey jumpsuit greeted him. "You must be the plumber who thinks he can fix the sub," he said with a smirk. Jack smiled politely. "I'm just here to look at the system. Won't know if I can fix it until I see it." The man gave a short laugh and nodded. "Fair enough. Good luck." They led Jack to the heart of the problem, the pressure control area. Water needed to flow in and out of certain compartments during training exercises. The system had to manage temperature, pressure, and direction, but it wasn't working. Some areas had no flow at all, while others were leaking. Valves were stuck, gauges gave false readings, and one wrong move could flood a room. Jack stood silently for a moment, examining everything. He touched the pipes, listened for vibrations, felt the air for moisture. He asked for a manual. They gave him a thick binder full of diagrams and maintenance logs. He stayed late into the night, reading every word. Over the next week, Jack returned. Every day, he brought his own tools. He cleaned the corroded metal, took apart broken valves, and installed new ones. He studied the strange systems like a student learning a new language. He found problems no one else had noticed, like a bypass valve that was jammed with a metal shaving, or a pressure regulator that had been installed backwards, but it wasn't easy. One day, while tightening a fitting near the engine room, the pipe suddenly burst. Water shot out with force, soaking Jack from head to toe. He yelled for someone to shut off the main valve, but it was stuck. He had to crawl through a narrow passage and turn it manually. His knuckles were bruised, his back sore, and his confidence shaken. Still, he didn't quit. Each problem he solved made him smarter. Each mistake taught him something new. He began to understand how the submarine worked, not just as a system of pipes, but as a breathing machine. Every piece mattered. Every connection had a purpose. The men who had laughed at him began to take notice. "He's really doing it," one of them said. Another added, "I didn't think he'd last a day." Jack worked alone most of the time, but he asked questions when he needed to. He even called up a retired Navy engineer for advice one evening, just to confirm a suspicion he had about water recycling loops. The man was surprised to hear from a civilian plumber, but also impressed by Jack's curiosity. 2 weeks after he first stepped onto the sub, Jack stood in the control room and turned the final valve. He looked at the gauges. Pressure was steady. Flow was even. No leaks, no bursts. The whole system worked. He asked the engineer to test it. They ran a full training cycle. Water pumped in and out. Heat exchangers worked. Waste filters cleared. Everything functioned smoothly. When it was done, the engineer turned to Jack and offered a handshake. "I've seen trained specialists fail to fix this. I don't know how you did it, but you earned my respect." Jack felt proud, but humble. "I just listened to the pipes," he said. "They tell you what's wrong if you pay attention." Word spread fast. A civilian plumber with no submarine experience had done what trained techs couldn't. Suddenly, Jack wasn't just the guy who fixed kitchen sinks. He was the plumber who fixed a submarine. Offers started coming in. Private companies wanted his help with marine systems. A tech college invited him to speak to students. Even the local news wanted to do a story. But more important than the fame was what Jack learned. He realized that skills, no matter how simple they seem, can take you anywhere. He saw that courage wasn't about being fearless, but about trying something hard, even when you don't know the outcome. And he discovered that sometimes one bet made over drinks can change your whole life. If you're willing to rise to the challenge. That was just the beginning. Jack's life was never the same again. He had walked into the submarine as a plumber and came out as a man with a new purpose. And little did he know, the next challenge was already waiting. After successfully fixing the submarine's complex plumbing system, Jack returned home to a hero's welcome. His story had spread beyond the naval base, capturing the attention of local news outlets and social media. People were fascinated by the tale of a humble plumber who took on a daunting challenge and triumphed. Jack's phone began ringing non-stop. Homeowners, businesses, and even educational institutions wanted to hear his story or seek his expertise. He was invited to speak at schools, sharing his experience and inspiring students to pursue careers in skilled trades. Recognizing the opportunity, Jack decided to expand his plumbing business. He hired apprentices, teaching them the importance of perseverance, attention to detail, and continuous learning. Jack emphasized that plumbing wasn't just about fixing leaks. It was about understanding systems and solving problems. One day, Jack received a call from a large engineering firm. They were working on a state-of-the-art underwater research facility and needed someone with his unique experience. The project involved designing and installing a complex plumbing system that could withstand extreme underwater pressure. Excited by the challenge, Jack accepted the offer. He collaborated with engineers and scientists, sharing his practical knowledge and learning from their theoretical expertise. Together, They developed innovative solutions, blending traditional plumbing techniques with cutting-edge technology. The project was a success, earning Jack recognition in professional circles. He was invited to conferences and workshops where he spoke about the importance of adaptability and the value of hands-on experience. Jack's journey inspired many to view skilled trades with newfound respect. Back home, Jack continued to mentor young plumbers, emphasizing that every job, no matter how small, was an opportunity to learn and grow. He often reminded them of his own journey, starting from a simple bet in a bar to becoming a respected figure in his field. Jack's story became a testament to the idea that with determination, humility, and a willingness to embrace challenges, anyone could achieve greatness. His life had indeed changed forever, not just because of the submarine he repaired, but because of the doors it opened and the lives he touched along the way. After Jack's success fixing the submarine plumbing, his life began to change in ways he never expected. Word about his skills spread far and wide. People started calling him for jobs beyond ordinary plumbing, projects involving complex water systems, even underwater work. Jack's phone kept ringing with opportunities and challenges. One day, Jack got a call that surprised him. It was from a government research lab near the coast. They were working on a secret underwater project, a small but advanced submarine meant to explore deep ocean areas no one had visited. But they had a huge problem. The submarine's water and air systems were failing. If they didn't fix the problem fast, the project would be delayed for months, costing millions of dollars. The lab's manager explained that previous specialists tried fixing the plumbing but failed. Jack, with his fresh experience, was their last hope. Though nervous, Jack accepted. The chance to work on a high-tech submarine thrilled him. This was no ordinary pipe job. It was a chance to prove himself on an even bigger stage. When Jack arrived at the lab, he met a team of scientists and engineers. They were friendly but cautious. Some were skeptical about a plumber working on such a delicate machine. Jack understood their worries. He didn't know everything about the technology inside the submarine yet, but he was ready to learn and work hard. Jack spent days studying blueprints, manuals, and system maps. The submarine's plumbing was far more complicated than the one he fixed before. Pipes intertwined with electrical systems. Sensors monitored pressure, temperature, and water flow constantly. Even a small mistake could cause disaster. As he worked, Jack found it helpful to ask questions. The scientists taught him about pressure valves and the dangers of deep-sea water pressure. The engineers explained how air recycling worked inside the sub. Jack listened carefully, taking notes and absorbing every bit of knowledge. Despite his best efforts, Jack ran into problems. Some parts of the plumbing were corroded beyond repair. Others were designed so intricately that replacing them was difficult. Without damaging nearby components, he worked long hours, often late into the night, trying different fixes, testing and retesting. During one tough night, a pipe burst inside the submarine's narrow corridor, spraying water everywhere. Jack had to crawl through tight spaces to find and close the main valve manually. His clothes were soaked and exhaustion hit hard. But Jack didn't give up. He reminded himself of why he took the challenge, to prove that no problem was too big. One breakthrough came when Jack noticed a small, overlooked valve that controlled the flow of seawater in a crucial system. The valve was stuck partially closed, causing pressure problems throughout the sub. Using his tools, Jack carefully freed and adjusted it. Slowly, the system's pressure stabilized and water flow improved. Jack shared the progress with the team. Their skeptical looks turned into smiles and nods of approval. They started trusting him more, even involving him in discussions about future upgrades. As the project neared completion, Jack was invited to a special ceremony, honoring everyone who helped. The government officials praised Jack's hard work, His courage to take on something outside his usual job, and his determination to learn. For the first time, Jack felt proud not only as a plumber, but as a valued member of a team that built something important. Back home, Jack's family noticed the change, too. He was more confident and happy. His children admired their dad, who fixed submarines and worked with scientists. Jack promised to keep learning and to take on new challenges, no matter how strange or difficult. Jack's story became more than just about plumbing. It was about bravery, hard work, and the power of believing in yourself even when others doubt you. His journey showed that skills, combined with a willingness to learn, could open doors to places and adventures no one ever imagined. After his success with the submarine project, Jack returned home with newfound confidence. His story had inspired many, and he began receiving invitations to speak at schools and community events, sharing his experiences and the importance of skilled trades. Realizing the impact he could have, Jack decided to mentor young apprentices, teaching them not just the technical aspects of plumbing, but also the values of perseverance and continuous learning. He emphasized that challenges are opportunities in disguise. As technology advanced, Jack embraced modern plumbing innovations. He learned about smart plumbing systems that detect leaks and conserve water, trenchless pipe repair techniques that minimize disruption, and eco-friendly solutions that promote sustainability. By integrating these into his work, Jack not only improved efficiency, but also contributed to environmental conservation. Jack's commitment to excellence and adaptability earned him recognition in professional circles. He collaborated with engineers and scientists on complex projects, blending traditional plumbing skills with cutting-edge technology. His journey from a simple bet to becoming a respected figure in the plumbing industry showcased the transformative power of dedication and innovation. Jack's life had become full of surprises. After working on submarines, speaking at schools, and training young plumbers, he felt a great sense of purpose, but he didn't know that his biggest test was still ahead. One evening, Jack received an official-looking letter in the mail. It was from a private marine technology company called Aquacore. They specialized in building deep-sea research stations and needed someone to inspect a plumbing failure that had caused flooding inside a half-built underwater base. The company had heard of Jack's work through the scientists at the government lab. They weren't just inviting him to inspect the damage. They wanted him to lead a small team to travel underwater, live inside the structure, and fix it from the inside. It was risky. The station was 300 feet below the ocean surface. Jack had never stayed underwater for more than a few hours. Now, they wanted him to live inside a high-pressure habitat for almost a week. He talked to his kids that night over dinner. "It's dangerous," he said, "but it's also a chance to do something incredible again. And it could help scientists around the world." His daughter looked up and said, "You always told us not to be afraid of hard work, Daddy." His son added, "And you always fix what others can't." Jack smiled and agreed. He called Aquacore the next morning. "I'll do it," he said. A few weeks later, Jack arrived at the coastal Aquacore base. He met the other team members. Mia, an underwater robotics engineer, Tom, a deep-sea diver with years of experience, and Dr. Leon, a calm and clever systems specialist. They trained for 5 days, learning how to use oxygen tanks, emergency systems, and even tiny underwater drones. When the time came, they entered a small submersible that lowered them into the deep ocean. Jack had seen the sea from the surface all his life, but down here it was different. The water was dark, cold, and quiet. As they reached the underwater base, its lights flickered like a glowing lantern in a black ocean. Inside the station, things were not good. One of the air filtration units was leaking condensed water, causing corrosion in the walls. A waste pipe had cracked, flooding one of the smaller sleeping quarters. And worst of all, a control pump used to equalize pressure wasn't working. If it failed completely, the pressure could crush parts of the station. Jack stayed calm. He had faced worse. He moved carefully through the small, cold corridors, checking each part of the system. The pipes were thinner than usual and made of a strange new alloy. Jack couldn't replace them using normal tools. He had to think fast. He remembered something he read during his time at the lab about ultrasonic pipe welders. The station had one in storage. With help from Mia, he learned to operate it safely. The welds had to be perfect or the seal wouldn't hold. Day by day, the repairs continued. Jack barely slept, but he never complained. Tom helped drain the flooded room. Mia sent drones to scan for damage in areas they couldn't reach. Dr. Lian watched the pressure systems and guided the repairs from the control hub. On the 5th day, they completed the last and most difficult task, repairing the main equalizer pump. The repair went smoothly. When Jack flipped the switch and saw the pressure levels balance, he knew it was done. The team floated in the main chamber, cheering and hugging. They had done it. The underwater station was now safe and ready to continue its important research. When they returned to the surface, reporters and company leaders were waiting. But Jack didn't care about fame anymore. He only cared about doing his job right. And this job had been one of the hardest and most meaningful he'd ever done. Aquacore offered Jack a permanent job on their innovation board, but he said no. "I'm a plumber," he told them. "I want to stay close to the work, help real people, and train those who come next." That night, back home, Jack tucked his kids into bed. His daughter asked, "Are you going on another adventure soon?" Jack laughed. "Maybe," he said, "but for now I'm just glad to be home." And as he sat on the porch under the stars, he looked up at the night sky and thought about the ocean below. He had gone deeper than most people ever would, not just into the sea, but into himself. His life had started with a simple bet to fix a submarine. Now he was something more than just a plumber. He was a builder of hope, a master of problem-solving, and a father who proved that even ordinary people could do extraordinary things. After the underwater mission with Aquacore, Jack tried to return to his normal life. He worked on local plumbing jobs again, fixing clogged drains, broken heaters, and leaking pipes for old neighbors and new customers. His hands were still skilled, his heart still humble. But something inside Jack had changed. He had seen too much. He had worked in silence beneath the ocean, where small problems became dangerous fast. He had learned the value of teamwork, patience, and staying calm under pressure. Now, everything he did above water felt different, more meaningful. People in town started treating Jack like a local hero. Kids pointed at him in grocery stores. "That's the man who fixed the underwater station," they'd whisper. But Jack stayed grounded. When people asked how he'd done it, he just said, "One pipe at a time." Months passed. Then one morning, a strange black SUV pulled up outside Jack's home. Two people stepped out wearing clean suits with a navy blue patch on the sleeve, Oceanic Defense and Recovery Task Force. Jack greeted them on his porch. "I'm not sure what kind of trouble you're bringing," he joked, "but I've got coffee. If you want to talk." They accepted. Inside, the man and woman introduced themselves as part of a new initiative, one created after recent sea-based disasters caused by outdated or badly designed water systems. Offshore rigs, military vessels, even coastal floodgates. They needed someone who could look at problems differently, someone who didn't rely only on what the manual said, but who could solve real-world messes. "We want you to lead a hands-on inspection team," the woman explained. "You won't be alone. We'll give you equipment, a small crew, but you'll decide how to fix what's broken." Jack leaned back, thoughtful. "I'm just a plumber." "You're more than that," the man replied. "You're someone who never says no to a challenge." Jack thought of his kids, his home, his quiet workbench. He also thought of all the places that needed help, places where water was leaking, pressure was rising, and systems were crumbling from neglect. He agreed. The first mission took Jack to an old offshore oil platform being converted into a marine research base. The platform had been abandoned for years. Sea spray had rusted everything. Pipes hissed, valves leaked, and mold grew where it shouldn't. Jack and his small crew, a young apprentice named Luis, a tech expert named Riley, and a tough ex-seafarer named Gale, arrived by chopper. As they hovered over the platform, Riley warned, "Storm's coming. You'll have 3 days, maybe 4. The moment they landed, Jack felt the urgency. Floors were slippery. Warning lights flashed across panels. Riley tried to reboot the main water filter system, but something shorted. Jack rolled up his sleeves and got to work. He and Luis traced leaking pipes deep into the structure, mapping every weak point. Gale secured rusted access panels with steel. Braces. Riley used a thermal scanner to track hidden leaks. At night, the crew slept in damp quarters and cooked meals on a camp stove. They laughed over stories and grew close. Luis asked Jack, "What keeps you going?" Jack replied, "People forget how important plumbing is until it goes wrong. I keep going because I know someone needs to fix it." On the second day, Jack discovered the real danger, a corroded drainage pipe directly above a power hub. If it burst, water would fall onto live equipment, causing a short circuit that could destroy the entire base. Worse, it could electrocute anyone nearby. Jack called a team meeting. "We fix this first," he said. They planned carefully. Riley shut down power lines temporarily. Gale built a barrier. Jack and Luis climbed into the narrow crawl space and replaced the old pipe using quick seal resin and backup brackets. It was hot, wet, and dangerous. The pipe held. As the storm rolled in on the third night, thunder cracked and waves slammed the platform, but Jack's team stayed safe. The systems ran steady, the drains held firm. They had done it. Back on land, Jack submitted his report. The oceanic defense leaders were impressed. "You've done more than expected," they said. "We're assigning you to the northern checkpoint next." But Jack had something else in mind. "I want to start a program," he said, "to train plumbers, not just to fix houses, but to help in emergencies, to work on rigs, research labs, and underwater bases. Real skills, real field training. We need more boots on the ground and in the water." They approved. Jack's Rescue Plumbing Initiative was born. He built a training center near his town, inviting young people, veterans, and tradespeople who wanted to learn. He taught them how to listen to pipes, how to work under pressure, and most of all, how to care about the people depending on them. Jack didn't stop fixing pipes. He still showed up with his toolbox when someone's basement flooded or heater broke. But now he was also building a new future, pipe by pipe, student by student. The world started calling him something new. The deep plumber. He didn't mind. He still thought of himself as Jack, the plumber who once took a bet, who fixed a submarine, and who, along the way, learned that plumbing wasn't just about water. It was about life and trust and the quiet work that keeps everything flowing. It had been nearly a year since Jack launched the Rescue Plumbing Initiative. His small training center was now filled with new faces every week. Young people came from cities, farms, even other countries, some looking for a second chance, some just hoping to make a difference. Jack worked with every one of them, side by side. One morning, as Jack was teaching how to fix a pressure valve, a call came in from the Coastal Emergency Agency. There had been an earthquake near a remote island. Research outpost. The quake had cracked the freshwater system, damaged waste lines, and disabled the station's pressure-controlled seawater cooling tanks. The island wasn't connected to any major grid. The station's water systems ran deep beneath old volcanic rock. If the cooling system failed, the station's power cores would overheat and the station could be lost completely. Jack listened carefully. "How long until it goes critical?" he asked. 4 days, maybe 5, the caller said. We need someone fast, and someone who knows both water systems and deep ground pipes. Jack didn't hesitate. I'll go, he said, and I'm bringing 2 apprentices. He chose Mira, a quick-thinking student from coastal Maine, and Benny, a quiet but brilliant welder from a nearby city. They had trained with him for months and Jack trusted them. They packed gear, tools, portable pipe sealers, and emergency kits, then boarded a cargo helicopter that flew them over green water and broken cliffs. When they arrived, the island looked peaceful. But the damage beneath the surface told a different story. Cracks in the ground had pushed old pipes out of alignment. Seawater had begun leaking into the freshwater tanks. The toilets weren't working. And inside the generator chamber, pressure gauges flashed red. A team of scientists was already preparing to evacuate. It's too risky to stay, their leader said. But Jack stood firm. If we leave now, the station might never be usable. Again, let us try. Mira and Benny got to work under Jack's guidance. They set up a water redirect system that filtered seawater from the clean tanks. Jack crawled through narrow concrete shafts with a flashlight in his mouth, inspecting every part of the water network. Then came a bigger problem. One of the underground waste pipelines had fully collapsed. It was buried under old lava rock, and if it wasn't repaired, bacteria could leak into the drinking water. The only option was to dig down, reinforce the collapsed section, and reseal it. But the quake had made the soil unstable. Jack thought deeply. We'll dig slow, no machines, just hands and caution, he told the team. They spent the night digging. The ground shook now and then, but they didn't stop. Jack's fingers bled from rough stone, but he kept going. At last, they found the pipe, bent and broken, but fixable. Using a portable heat weld device, Jack and Benny patched the line while Mira monitored pressure levels. When they finished, the sun was rising, the Saar. Scientists tested the water and checked the systems. Everything held. The station was safe. Instead of evacuating, the science team called for new supplies. We're staying, the lead scientist said. Thanks to you 3. Back at the training center, Jack told the story to the new students. Not with pride, but with care. This isn't just about pipes, he said. It's about showing up when things break, about being the person who doesn't walk away. That week, Jack received another letter, this time from an international Marine Council. They wanted his help building the first fully underwater emergency shelter, a small chamber that could hold people trapped in ocean disasters. They needed someone who understood water, pressure, plumbing, and people. Jack thought for a long time. He looked around at the students in his classroom, at the tools on the wall, and the young faces filled with hope. Then he smiled. I'll help, he said, but I'm bringing my team. After the success on the island, Jack and his team became known far beyond their town. People from all over the world began writing letters, asking for help, advice, or to be trained. But Jack stayed focused. He only accepted work that mattered, projects that helped others, protected the sea, and made plumbing more than just a job. Then, one letter came that felt different. It was from the International Marine Safety Council. They were working on something bold, a fully underwater emergency shelter, a place where deep-sea divers, researchers, or trapped submarine crews could stay alive while waiting for rescue. It had to be strong, self-powered, and above all have perfect water and waste systems. But their first prototype had failed. Moisture had crept into the walls. Pressure valves leaked. Waste pumps jammed after 3 days. They asked Jack to lead a new build. This time they wanted it done right. Jack agreed, but only if his apprentices could come. Benny and Mira were excited. They had never built something so important before. The plan was to place the shelter 100 feet beneath the surface, just off a deep ocean ridge. It would be dropped down in parts, assembled underwater, and tested for weeks. If it worked, it could save hundreds of lives over the years. Jack and his team flew to a floating lab where engineers and divers were already waiting. The lab was Busy. Machines beeped, screens blinked, everyone looked worried. One engineer greeted Jack. "Glad you're here," he said. "We've had leak after leak. We can't trust the pipes to hold. And the waste pumps overheat too fast." Jack walked over to the shelter parts, steel walls, sealed floors, plastic pipes, pressure tubes. He touched each one, feeling where they bent, where they should twist, where they were too thin. "This is good material," Jack said, "but someone used the wrong layout. Pipes are too close. Heat builds up too fast." He picked up a marker and started drawing. He changed where the pipes would run, added open spaces for airflow, and redesigned the pump circuit. "You've got to let the water breathe," he explained. The engineers stared. "You're not an architect," one said. "No." Jack smiled, "but I've fixed more leaks than most people have seen." They agreed to try his design. For the next week, Jack, Benny, and Mira worked with the crew, guiding the build. Jack showed divers how to waterproof every bolt. Mira taught them to run long, curved lines instead of tight angles. Benny added welded flanges to keep high-pressure pipes locked in. Finally, the shelter was ready to lower. Jack and Benny dove down with the first chamber. It sank slowly, swinging in the dark water until it settled on the seabed. They bolted it into place. Next came the connectors, then the airlocks, then the waste management pods. Everything clicked together. Jack checked each valve himself. No leaks, no gaps. They stayed inside the shelter for 4 hours, testing everything. The pumps worked. The vents ran smooth. The filters stayed clean. It was a success. The team spent 2 weeks living part-time in the shelter to test its systems. Every day they made small changes, replacing a gasket, adjusting a sensor, flushing backup pipes. Jack trained the divers to think like plumbers. "Pressure doesn't wait," he told them. "Always listen to your tools." One night, a storm shook the floating lab. High waves broke a mooring line. A power line snapped, shutting down their surface systems. Jack, Benny, and Mira were inside the shelter when the lab above lost power. All lights went out. They sat in the dark, underwater, with only emergency batteries and the soft hum of the shelter's systems. "Should we panic?" Benny asked. "No," Jack said quietly. "This is what we built this for." They waited for hours, and the shelter held. When the storm passed, the lab fixed its systems, and the rescue team found Jack's crew safe and calm. The Marine Safety Council was amazed. They made Jack the official lead for all future underwater shelter designs. But Jack had one condition. "Let me train teams everywhere, not just here. I want to send people to coastal towns, island stations, even fishing villages. I want to teach real plumbing skills, and not just underwater." They agreed. Jack returned home, where his training center had grown. New people arrived every day, people who had heard the story of the underwater shelter and wanted to learn. Jack welcomed them all. He still taught with the same simple lessons. He still fixed toilets and old water heaters when neighbors called. He still believed that the best work was quiet, careful, and done with care. But now, when he looked out at the ocean, he knew something else. He had made a place where even the deep water couldn't stop people from living, breathing, and hoping, all because he took a bet once and never gave up. Months had passed since Jack built the underwater shelter. Word spread across the world about the plumber who helped save lives under the sea. People started calling him the man who sealed the deep. But Jack didn't care much about names. He still wore the same tool belt. He still wiped his hands on the same old towel. He still taught his students to listen before they tightened a bolt. But then came a message he didn't expect. It was from a quiet research ship off the Arctic coast. A small team had gone down to explore an ancient underwater trench. Down there, they had found something strange. A large metal door buried deep under the seabed, hidden inside old rock. No one could explain it. The problem was, the metal door had started leaking gas, something the scientists called thermal methane. That gas was dangerous. It built up pressure. If too much escaped, it could cause underwater explosions, or even affect sea currents. Worse, it was rising toward a coral shelf full of rare life. They didn't know how to stop it. "We think it's a broken containment valve," the message said. "Old, maybe military. We're not sure." They asked Jack if he would come. Jack studied the diagrams they sent. He saw an old seal ring, rusted edges, and a cracked pressure cap. It reminded him of a valve he once fixed in his early days, back when he didn't even own a truck. Jack agreed. This time, he didn't bring Benny or Mira. He brought Max, one of his newer students, a soft-spoken young man who was good with small tools and even better at thinking under stress. Jack told him, "You'll see something no one's ever seen. Just remember, it's still just plumbing." They took a frozen flight to the ship and suited up. The dive was cold. Everything looked blue and black. Ice chunks floated like glass. Above them, when they reached the trench, lights showed a huge metal shape buried in the rock. It wasn't a door like in a house. It looked more like a round submarine hatch, wide as a car and stuck sideways into stone. The leak was slow but steady. Bubbles rose from a crack that pulsed every few seconds. Jack studied it with calm eyes. "It's old. This seal is iron, not steel. Looks like it's been holding for decades." Max asked, "Why break now?" Jack pointed at the ground. "The earth moves even deep down, and pressure always wins if no one watches." They set up a small repair shelter around the hatch. Jack didn't try to open the door. That wasn't the goal. He just needed to stop the leak. He cleaned the crack with underwater tools, brushed away silt, and removed rust with a soft current. Then he applied a thick, slow-setting resin sealant, something he had developed himself back in his garage. Max helped hold the tools. His hands shook a little, but Jack guided him. They layered mesh, added thermal tape, then gently clamped a pressure ring over the crack. When the bubbles stopped, Jack watched for 10 more minutes. Nothing moved, no sound. The leak was sealed, but just as they packed up, Max noticed something. "Jack, look," he said. A soft red light blinked below. The hatch, hidden until now. Jack swam closer. It was a small symbol, an old one. Something he recognized from blueprints he saw during military repair jobs. "It's a fail-safe trigger," Jack whispered. "If the seal breaks, the door opens." He realized something then. This wasn't just a leak. It was a warning system. Whatever was behind that hatch, gas, equipment, or something else, wasn't meant to come out, and he had just stopped it from doing so. Back at the ship, Jack didn't tell the scientists everything. He showed them how the leak was fixed, how to monitor the pressure, and how to reinforce the area. "Don't disturb it," he said. "Sometimes the best fix is knowing when not to open something." They nodded. On the way home, Max asked, "Do you think it was dangerous?" Jack didn't answer right away. Then he said, "I think plumbing isn't always about pipes. Sometimes it's about holding the world together." Quietly. When Jack got home, he added a new class to his training center: emergency containment and old world systems. He taught how to fix, yes, but also how to understand old builds and how to respect systems made long ago. Mira returned to help teach. Benny started designing a smart pipe system that could alert people when pressure built too fast. People kept writing to Jack, asking about what was under the sea, but he never said much. He just smiled, handed them a wrench, and said, "Let's fix something real today." And down in the cold trench, deep beneath the ocean, the red light stayed off, because someone cared enough to seal it. Jack was back at home. The wind was cool, the sky wide and clear, and the familiar smell of pipe glue and motor oil floated from his open workshop. His hands were rough. His eyes had more lines now. But his spirit, still solid, still focused. He had fixed a leak at the bottom of the sea. But something about that last job stayed with him. Not the fear, not the cold, not even the blinking red light. It was the silence. Silence from below. Silence from the people who sent him there. Silence from the past. 1. Morning. As Jack was teaching his class about airlocks, a black car pulled up outside. 2 people stepped out, one in a plain suit, the other in a navy coat with old medals. They walked straight to Jack. "You're the plumber who sealed hatch 17B, the suited one said. Jack didn't answer. The man in the navy coat spoke gently. "You need to see something." Jack nodded. They flew to a quiet coastal base, one not shown on maps. The officers there weren't loud. The halls were cold. On the wall was a picture of something old and strange, a blueprint of the same hatch Jack had sealed. "We built that hatch in the 1970s, the officer said. "It was part of a failed program. We tried to create deep-sea energy from heat vents, but we dug too deep. Below that trench was a gas chamber with unpredictable shifts. They showed Jack a recording from sensors near the trench. Pressure had risen twice since his fix. Both times it stopped. The seal held. His repair had saved a chain reaction from reaching nearby coral ridges and shifting sea currents. If you hadn't been there," the officer said, "the damage could have reached the surface." Jack felt something heavy in his chest. Not fear, something deeper. A strange respect for what lived in the dark places of the earth. The officer continued. "We want to hire you to monitor deep pressure points across the globe. Quietly, carefully, permanently." Jack thought about it. The offer was big, secure, worldwide, but he shook his head. "I'm just a plumber," he said, "and I still have a class to teach." Instead, he gave them a condition. "Let me build teams, everywhere. Local plumbers who know their land, their pipes, their pressure points. Train them, trust them." The officer nodded. That night, back at home, Jack sat in his old chair and thought about all the work still ahead. He looked at the old toolbox he first carried onto the submarine so long ago. Then a small voice spoke beside him. "Dad?" It was his daughter. "Can I help in the shop tomorrow?" Jack smiled. He looked at her and saw something important, someone ready to care, to build, to fix. "Sure," he said, "but we start early." Word of Jack's decision spread. Not the details, just the idea that a plumber had saved the deep sea and didn't ask for money, medals, or fame. And slowly, across different countries, new centers opened. Training rooms, mobile repair trucks, underwater plumbing kits. They were quiet, humble, and smart. They bore no names except one symbol, a small wrench inside a ring with a single word, SEAL. In the end, Jack didn't change the world with speeches or inventions. He changed it by fixing what no one else would, by answering a call few even heard, by saying yes when the leak was deeper than anyone imagined, and by teaching others to do the same, with hands that were steady, hearts that were kind, and eyes that saw beauty in even the oldest pipe, because sometimes the most important fix is the one no one sees. Hit subscribe and keep watching.